let's figure out why in chess that's actually a really good idea. Why do you think in chess it's really good practice to anticipate your opponent always making the best move?
Yeah, I think it has something to do with like the completeness of information. Like in chess, you have absolute complete information about everything that's going on. In poker, you don't. You don't know a lot of things. There's a lot of variables unaccounted for that you have to assume, unlike in chess. But how does that play into it?
Well, you're moving too fast again. Just focus on chess right now, right?
Yeah, only chess.
Why
That
does it
makes
work in chess? Why is it a good idea, a good practice to assume that your opponent will make the best move?
um because if you assume that they if you leave yourself vulnerable if you don't assume that in
Exactly. That's
chess.
good. And
Um, yeah,
and if you don't want to leave yourself vulnerable, assuming that they're going to make the best move allows you to counter that or be ready for it in your current move, right?
yeah,
So that sounds like a great idea to apply also in poker, but it doesn't work precisely because of what you said earlier. You came to that conclusion yourself earlier. In poker, you have incomplete information. In
yeah,
chess, when I'm looking at a board and I can anticipate my opponent's move, I can only do that because I know what the best move should be because I have all the information. I'm looking at their pieces. I see where they stand, right?
yeah,
In poker, I don't know what my opponent is holding. I can only assume a range of hands, right?
yeah,
So now, to some degree, with the range of hand that they can have, I can say I can have some idea what the best move would be, right? But
yeah,
until I get to the point where they're narrow, where the range is completely narrowed and condensed, that
mm-hmm,
assumption is going to be very wide, like pre-flop, flop, turn. Maybe on some rivers I can do that, right?
yeah,
But when the range construction is really wide, it's really hard to say what is the best move. You can come up with a series of best moves, but then that encapsulate all possibilities, right? Almost. Now, that theory works in chess, but it doesn't work in poker just because of what we just said. But how can we adapt that theory to make it work to our advantage in poker, knowing that we don't have the information that we need for that theory to apply it exactly like that? How do we compensate for lack of information?
well, you would just be like it's more like you're predicting you're assuming uh, you have to pretty much like assume things, and then once you like have those assumptions, like be confident in your assumptions and like kind of just run with those assumptions, so like those assumptions are correct, and therefore since I'm confident in these assumptions that now I can do this because of those assumptions that I'm confident in, like, maybe I don't really know
Yeah,
actually how to
you're on the
answer.
right track, right? In
Yeah.
live poker, right, we have a
Right.
huge advantage versus online poker. In live poker, our advantages are read on the player, their tendencies, right? We can make
Yeah.
assumptions based on their tendencies, right? For example, if you're in a hand with a guy in an online game, right?
Yeah.
And or in a live game and the guy just sat down. It's his first hand he's about to play. You've never played against this guy before, right? And he
Yeah.
opens for standard four big blind open in the middle position, right?
Yeah.
What can you assume about his range?
Um, I mean, you just assume it's like a standard middling position open, and also like his sizing would also kind of tell you something about like he kind of knows sizing, he knows like things like that.
Right. Can you assume a wide range or can you assume a narrow range?
You can assume like kind of wide middle position open.
Yeah, it's a wide range, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know anything. You have to assume a wide range because you don't know anything about this guy, right?
Yeah.
Conversely, let's say a player sits down that you do have history with, right? You know for a fact that he only opens aces for 5 big blinds in the middle position,
Yeah.
right? And he opens for 5 big blinds. What assumption can you make?
Yeah, you assume he has aces.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So in live poker, we have that advantage, which is history. Now, if you don't have history, right, that makes things a little bit more difficult, but you can still maneuver with uh, some standard assumptions. And once you have your assumptions, standard or very player specific, right? Unlike chess, where your job is to assume that they're going to make the best move, your job becomes pushing them into making the worst move, right?
Uh,
Into a
yeah.
bad, putting them in the spot where they make a mistake. And that mistake could be any number of different mistakes, but the easiest mistake to induce is to make the other player reveal their hand strength to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, if you're under the gun and this unknown player opens for 5 big blinds, right?
Yeah.
If you just flat, right?
Okay.
Have you made the other player make a mistake?
No.
No. Have you gained any information about their range?
No.
No, not at all, right?
Yeah.
But if I were to re-raise them, right?
Yeah.
Now the other player has to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they reveal some information in every decision that they make, right? Now, none of those singular decisions is going to really solidify the range for you. But when you make a player make multiple decisions in one hand, right? Or even in one session, but in particularly in one hand, successively about one single range, now you get to realize the range construction a lot better. For example, in that instance where you're facing an open for 5 big blind, if you were to re-raise them and they flat versus they fold versus they four bet, that gives you a lot of information. Even if they just flat, you go to a random board.
Yeah.
If you just, let's say you go to a random board, and if you just bet and they call, do you get any information about them?
Yeah. Yeah. Get
I
to.
guess you do get some information if you just bet and they call, right? But
Yeah.
what if you just check and leave the betting up to them, right? Or
Yeah.
checking, right? If you check and leave the betting as you should, this is why checking out of position is really, really effective.
Mm-hmm.
You leave the door open to them to reveal their hand, because most people will reveal the strength of their hand with the bet sizes, right? If you're going against a professional, the 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 professional makes it tough because they tend to be more balanced with their entire range. An amateur, a recreational player, they are going to check most of their range that missed, uh, bet a small amount for value with some of their bullshit that connected, and go huge for their really value hands that are vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
You let them do that, you gain a lot of information, right? You let them dig their own hole, right? Because they will, right? In chess, you don't need to do that because you see all the information ahead and you can plan for the best possible move and then let them dig their own hole. You don't have to force them into any spot, right? I mean, yeah, I guess in chess you can manipulate people as well, but
Yeah.
manipulation in chess is more about outsmarting them rather than in poker is about them revealing themselves to you. In poker, it's more about them digging their own hole.
Yeah, like chess, like you like kind of you're blasting off like the best moves, and then like maybe they'll make a mistake, kind of, and then you can pounce on it. But I guess, I mean, it's kind of similar also because it's like there's a lot of times in chess where like these guys will they'll just take like, especially versus like younger players, like the older guys, they'll just take the kids to like somewhere they've never studied, like just put them in like a free like for all, like, you know,
Yeah.
um, which is similar in poker where that is kind of a thing, but um, I think it's more so in poker, like you really I don't know.
Let's talk about the hand that I played against that guy with pocket aces, right? He opens huge under the gun, right? For like 15 big blinds, right?
Yeah,
Me knowing that guy, what does that tell me? That tells me he has a premium hand because I know his tendencies. I know that his opening range, not even his three bet range, is really only condensed with like aces and kings and queens, ace and king, right?
yeah,
Especially with that sizing, right? Why did I choose to call with pocket fives when I know I'm very behind?
yeah, because of implied odds like that.
Because the implied odds, because I know if I connect with that board, right,
Yeah,
I can take all of his money. And two, even if I don't connect, if I slow him, I know his tendencies. If I put a shit ton of pressure on him, I can get him off the hand, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I sort of set the trap, right? And I just call, right? And the board comes king, ten, right?
yeah.
What was his next mistake?
Um, but he see bet small, right?
You see bet half pot.
Half pot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his C bet. I mean, I don't. It's not terrible, terrible per se, but at the same time, he doesn't. If you flat call, it's like you're still. He doesn't really define your range at all. If you well, it does a little bit by calling, just the active calling, but like still, he doesn't really. Yeah, if you after somebody calls his bet on the flop on the turn, he doesn't. He hasn't. It's pretty hard to define your range. You know.
Well, you're jumping ahead again. Don't go to the turn. Let's focus on the flop,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
He see bet half pot, right?
Yeah.
What is that C bet is supposed to accomplish? Because
Uh,
anytime you put money in the pot, right,
yeah.
it's supposed to have a goal,
Yeah. So he's value betting there, trying to get calls from worse hands like any king or any pair that wants to keep going with it.
right? And how many worse hands in that spot would call?
A pretty decent amount. Like most kings are calling there. Any tens obviously calling or raising.
Which kings? Which kings are calling them?
King queen, king jack, king tens obviously calling. King nine maybe, but it's kind of who the fuck has king nine there also. Some people might have
Nobody
king
has king
nine.
nine there, right?
Yeah. So like only
Uh,
those like Broadway kings are calling.
Broadway
Um
kings are calling. Yep. What
and
else is
then
calling?
possibly pairs like any pair like queens to jack, queens, jacks, nines maybe call. Um maybe even eights if you want to float it. Kind of indifferent I'd say. And
Maybe
then
sevens,
yeah, maybe sevens, like all
maybe
depends.
sixes,
Yeah, depending on like your stack depth and how deep you are, you can float wider. Um,
maybe fives,
yeah, maybe fives as well too.
right?
Any pair,
Maybe,
honestly, yeah.
maybe,
Even
yeah, any
deuces,
pair, right?
yeah, yeah.
Ace king wouldn't call in that spot. Why?
Ace king,
Yeah.
ace king flats. That if you flat ace king free, and you get that flop. I think you flat. What do you mean?
Ace king wouldn't flat in that spot because ace king would be three betting free, right?
Yeah, yeah. Usually, yeah,
So there's no ace kings in that range, right? I'm my
yeah,
range is capped,
yeah,
right? I have no ace king, I have no kings, I have no queens, I have no jacks,
yeah. Mm-mm.
right? So you can discount that out of my range entirely, right?
Yeah,
And because he has aces, he's blocking most of uh ace queen, ace jack, right? So
yeah,
really those there's not that many of them in my range, right?
yeah. I forgot about queen jack
So
too. But yeah,
so let's look at his range that he's getting value from. He's getting really value from a few king queens and a few king jack suited, right?
Yeah.
So how many combos there are of that?
Yeah.
About 12 combos, right?
Also queen jack.
Also queen jack, but it's a paired board, right?
Yeah. And you only really have suited queen jacks, like 4 combos, I'd say. But
Exactly, right? Versus
yeah.
how many combos that won't get he won't get any value from, and will just fold in that spot,
Yeah.
right?
Like yeah.
A
Every
lot. Right?
yeah.
Versus how many combos that would float in that spot. There's a lot more combos that will float in it.
Yeah.
So what could he have done different instead of betting half pot in that spot that would actually give him some information and protect his hand a little bit better?
Yeah, I think like I prefer checking or betting small there if you want to bet. Probably leaning towards check. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And don't forget that in that spot, I can have a lot of tens, right?
Yeah.
So uh, checking or betting small would give him a lot more. Uh, it will make his life a lot easier post flop, and also will give him some information. For example, if he checks and I bet, or if he bets small and I raise him, it would make his life really easy. For example, if I have a hand like Queen Jack, right, like you said, right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
raise a lot of Queen Jacks in that spot. I'm gonna re-raise them with tens, any 10?
Probably not if he bets half pot.
No,
No. No.
right? If he goes small, I'm just gonna,
Maybe
you know,
raised or
but because he bet such a large amount, right? Number one, his bet size was large enough that I'm not gonna re-raise any of my value with him, but it was small enough that I'm gonna float, right? If you're
yeah.
gonna bet in that spot, either you gotta go really small or really big,
Yeah.
right? Because if he went pot size or over pot size, right? I'm never gonna float him. It just pulls out all my floating garbage.
Yeah.
The only hand that he's gonna get called with in that spot is pocket tens, king 10, or ace 10,
Yeah.
right? But he went half pot, and then the turn comes absolute garbage, right? But
Yeah.
it does bring in the backdoor flush draw, right? And now he decides he checks.
Yeah.
Why is that a mistake?
Well, it's like kind of counterintuitive because it's like on that turn on the flop he's saying like I have value a good hand, like I want to put more money in, I want to build this pop, and on a Rick turn which changes nothing, he decides to slow down. It's like he's kind of like he can't really decide if he wants to like get well.
He can't
mm,
decide what he wants to do because he has no
yeah.
information about my hand. Because what he
Yeah.
did pre-flop and on the flop gave him no information. Now the backdoor flush draw comes in, and he's seeing monsters on the table. He thinks I may have a 10 or a backdoor flush draw, and he wants to play it safe, right? He wants to see a safe river, right?
Yeah.
Whereas what should he do when that brick backdoor flush comes in?
Yeah, it's probably just get it in somehow, like get bet huge or I don't know how deep he is or whatever, but if he can, like if he has like 1.5, if his like SPR is like under 2, I'd say just jam.
But it wasn't. Why? Because uh, he let the flop, right?
Yeah.
If he had just check raised me on the flop, then he could easily get it in on the turn, right? We're
Yeah.
deep, right? But
Yeah.
he didn't do that, so now he can't fucking get it in, right? And he's afraid that if he bets anything, uh, I will float him for a flush draw, right? But he's not also ready to commit a big size bet. He can't get it in get all of it in, but he can get a big size bet in to commit himself to the pot. But he's afraid of doing that because he's afraid of a 10.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
he can't do anything.
it is interesting though. Like the check raise is there. Like if he checks, you bet. Like and he has a decent enough size. Like it's like shallow enough for him to jam. It's not terrible. It's
Right.
not bad. But it seems like just from like your player profile of him being like a nit, like who only opens aces pre-flop. It's obviously that's probably not his mindset. But
And what's
um,
my player profile? You played against me, and he's played against me a lot. What's my
yeah,
player profile, right?
yeah, you're gonna. He knows that you can like are capable of just blast of putting him like of having bluffs in this spot, and like he probably knows that. Um, you know, like he knows that like he's probably gonna have to face um pressure. I would say. Um,
Yeah, and this kind of player is not afraid of bluffs. What are they afraid of?
he's not afraid of bluffs. He's afraid
Uh,
of getting cracked. I think.
yeah, he's afraid of a value hand, right?
Yeah.
They know I'm capable of bluffing, but this is a scared player. A scared player is never afraid of bluffs. They're afraid of value, right?
That's interesting. I never thought about that's interesting.
Scared player would love for you to bluff them all day long. They'll stack you off, right? But they're
Yeah.
always afraid of value, right? Because
Yeah.
they're afraid of losing money, right? He's under bankroll. He's finally made a big stack. He doesn't want to lose. He doesn't know how to play that big stack. He's afraid of value. He's seeing monsters everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So it really makes it difficult for him to put the money in. So when he checks to me, right,
Yeah.
I'm only gonna bet in that spot if I have value, hoping for a check raise,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I have nothing, if I have showdown value or just draws of any kind, I'm just gonna check it back. My life is simple, right?
Yeah.
He nowhere up to that point has he made a single decision that makes my life difficult.
Yeah. True.
And the river breaks out, right? And that
Yeah.
break is really great for him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what does he do?
Checks.
He checks. Once again, he makes my life very, very simple. And what's my job? My number one rule is make their life as difficult as possible, right? I went for value. Again, I mistakenly misread his stack, right? He had two big chips on top of his stack that looked similar, so I didn't see them. Uh, I went for what I thought was a pot size bet, but I bet 2x pot, right?
Yeah.
And it put him in absolute grinder,
Yeah.
right?
But like still, even like it should be just a snap call, Um, kind of.
It's not a snap
It's
call.
not a snap. No, it's not a snap.
It's not a snap
Yeah.
call, right? If I had bet the amount that I wanted to bet, it would be a snap call. I wanted
Yeah.
a snap call, right?
Yeah.
I went for half of his remaining chips. That was my intention. But I ended up going for his whole entire stack, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
had gone for half of his remaining chips, it would have been a snap call. He would have for sure called me, right?
Yeah.
But this kind of player is scared, right? He's afraid of going home with nothing,
Yeah.
right? That's why my actually what I ended up betting against him is a great bluff size, and my value should have been much smaller, right? Which is what I thought I was doing. Uh,
Yeah.
Now let replay the entire hand. If he had opened for instead of fucking 15 big blinds, the standard size for that game, which is like 6 big blinds, under the gun, right?
Yeah.
Even on the big size, right?
Yeah. It,
He would have
it's
got probably 3 or 4 limpers, right? And I would have with my fives, probably three bet or limp, right?
Yeah.
And then even if we all limped and the board came king 10-10, right? He could have just checked in that spot. Somebody bet, throw away your aces, right? You don't lose much. It's really hard to play premium hands out of position, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but he's deep stacked and he opens for massive, and then he puts this arbitrary bet in on the flop, and then just completely gives up on the turn and the river, right? Really, 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 really typical and bad play at these stack signs, at these games. So if he had, instead of 200 big blinds that he had in front of him, let's say he had his typical 50 big blinds that he always has when he buys it, right?
Yeah.
He wouldn't be that scared, right? He would have bet 15 big blinds, and then on the flop, he would have got it all in,
Yeah. For sure.
right?
Yeah.
So going back to our original discussion, if people just happen to be playing the right way accidentally for the stack depth that they have, just wait for them for a stack imbalance. They're going to continue to play the same way. They're not going to adjust according to stacks. And now they become exploitable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Those
And tying it back to the chess thing, you have to give rope to your opponent so they can hang themselves by it, right? You have to put them in corners where they will make mistakes. Like, who was it that you quoted me the other day? You know, take them in
well,
dark corners that they never knew existed, right?
Mikhail Tal, chess
Yeah.
guy.
And you can't wait for people to do that for you, just as much as you can't wait for people to value bet for you. You know, people
Yeah.
love to fucking check hoping somebody will bet. No, you got to value bet yourself, and then you got to put them in spots where they don't know what to do. Because if I take you, uh, uh, you know, you seem to be like a reasonably traveled guy, right? But
Yeah.
let's say I pluck you out of your city and I'll drop you off in the middle of the night in a completely strange corner of the world, in a city and a country that you don't know anything about, right?
Yeah.
And I say, survive. Most
Okay.
likely you're not gonna, because you don't know where you are,
Yeah.
right? But if
Sure.
I just leave you where you are and I say survive, you're probably gonna survive. You are familiar with your surroundings,
Yeah.
right?
True. Yeah.
Checking, letting people make their own mistakes. It's like leaving them in their own city and say, hey, survive, make a mistake. They're not going to do it. You got to take them out of their element. How do you take them out of their element in poker? You got to bet. You got to use your stack depth, and you got to be creative with bet sizing to put them in corners that they don't know where they belong. And most people have never faced unorthodox bet sizing according to the stack size, right? Like, let's say you're super deep, right? Over
Yeah.
bets, they don't know what to do with. Really small fucking bets, they don't know what to do with. I played a hand in California a little while ago, and I'm playing against a really uh, uh, tic tac toe kind of capable, that
Yeah.
typical uh, tight aggressive player
Mm-hmm.
directly to my right, right?
Yeah.
And uh, he opens, and with some random hand, I three bet him, right? We
Yeah.
built a pretty big size. There was a few limpers ahead of him. And we go to a flop of queen garbage, garbage, right?
Yeah.
And there's like $100 in the pot right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he correctly checks to me,
Yep.
right? And I just bet $20 into 100,
Yeah.
super small, right?
Yeah.
Because I have absolutely garbage, right?
Yeah.
But I want to leave myself some room, and we're reasonably deep, both of us. And I want to leave some room for me to be able to get the money in when I float them with garbage, right?
Yeah.
and the turn comes. So now he calls. No, now there's $140 in the pot, right? And now the turn comes another queen. He
Yeah.
checks, right?
Yeah.
I just bet another $20,
Okay.
right?
Well, sure.
He has no idea what to do, right? If he has any queen, right, he would just re-raise me and I'll just fold, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but he knows that. If he has a queen, he knows that. So he's probably not gonna do that with a queen, right? Because he wants to get value. He knows that I'm a capable enough player that if he re-raises me after I bet small on the flop and the turn, I'm gonna fold most of my range, right? If he re-raises me. Uh,
Yeah.
if he has a queen in that spot, he should actually just flat the turn, right? Against me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let's say he has aces or kings, right? With my small bet, he doesn't know what to do. He really thinks that I have a queen right now, and he's afraid that if he flats me in that spot, I'm gonna go huge on the on the river, and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he just goes crazy, frustrated, and he folds. And he folded the best hand, right? Why?
Yeah.
Because he's never faced a guy that bets super small in position and then super small in position on the turn, and he doesn't know what to do, right? If I had bet half pot and then check the turn or bet big on the turn, he knows exactly what to do, right?
Yeah.
But by taking him to a place where he hasn't been before, he ends up invariably making a mistake because there are a lot of mistakes available to him and very few options are correct choice. And it's hard to accidentally land on them. If you're going to land on them, it's going to be either by accident or by skill. And he doesn't have the skill, so most likely he's going to end up on the wrong decision and he gives up the pot.
Yeah. But it's like at the same time, then how would you? I guess it's just you have to train those spots more than other people, so you get
You
familiar
train
with
those
them.
spots.
Well, it's kind
I
of like how
mean,
the fuck do you even get to that conclusion of the $20 bet on the turn? You know?
yeah, in a couple of different ways, right? Well, number one, I think about if I had the absolute nuts, what do I do in that spot,
Yeah.
right? That forms a baseline for absolute nuts, right? Then I think about, you know, if I had some middling value range, what I would do, right? And then I think about, what is the baseline GTO, right? And what is typically happens in these betting regimens? I mean, if you look at a game from the rails, right?
Yeah.
80% of what happens at the table is just so cookie cutter repetitive, right?
Yeah.
Very typical bet sizes going in 75%, 35%, 50%, right?
Yeah.
So when this is always what's happening, people kind of know how to deal with that, with those sizes. Take
Yeah.
unorthodox lanes and start actually doing it in your game more often. That way you kind of feel the reaction from people, how they play back at you, right? If you've never
Yeah.
done it, right, you're in unknown territory. You have to become familiar with that strange city where you're sending them to, right?
Yeah.
So you know what the mistakes are in that city. Like if I transport you to Tomsk, Russia, right? And I
Yeah.
say survive, and I've never been there. I don't know how to survive there myself. I don't know what you're gonna do right. I don't know what you're gonna do wrong, right?
Yeah.
But if I know exactly what goes on in Tomsk, Russia, and I sent you there, once you get there, from the get-go till the moment you die, I know what you're gonna do right or wrong.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to start playing these strange lines and incorporating it into your game um, more frequently, and do it in safe spots. Do it in spots where uh, you're not playing. Do it against weak players. I guess is what I'm saying, right? You do it against capable players, they're going to play back at you. But do it against really predictable weak players and gain their reaction. This is a people game. People are so focused on their uh, on their cards. But this is a people game. It has almost nothing to do with the cards that you're holding. It's all about what goes on in their mind and the money in front of them, right? Stack depth is so critical to this game. That's
Yeah.
the thing that's directly tied to their psychology, right? You get a guy with the same hand. You get a guy with pocket aces and he has $100 in front of him and he has no experience playing poker. He's going to play those pocket aces really confidently, right? But
Yeah.
now you put $1 million in front of him with the same fucking pocket aces in the same hand, same spot, same players, same action. They're going to be a fucking nervous wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing changed was stacked up, right?
Yeah. It is like what is it? Like it's like there's like a learning curve, kind of like I don't want to say like cost of like admission to like these like strategies, kind of like figuring out
Called
how to
tuition.
yeah, the tuition fee, yeah.
Yeah. You went to college, you pay tuition.
Yeah.
The school of poker never ends, right?
Yeah.
But there are ways to get a discounted lesson, right? And those ways are not trying these new strategies in massive spots where you actually have a hand. You got to try them in spots where you can easily walk away from the disaster that may ensue if you're experimenting.
Yeah, and I think a big issue is like if you like, especially when you're new to like these things, like you don't like you'll do it, it'll go right or like or it'll go wrong, and you don't know after why, kind of sometimes, you know, or like you don't know, don't I get like it could go bad. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, a lot of times you don't have feedback, right?
yeah, yeah,
uh, Poker doesn't always reward or punish, doesn't always reward good decisions and punish mistakes right away, right? It's a long game, right? So the feedback isn't always necessarily immediately there, but that's why there's poker coaching, a coach like me that you go to and you run these hands by. There's also Vinton Poker Coaching AI, right? It's free.
yeah,
You know, you can run it by that. Those are huge, huge tools, and if it's not available to you, the cost of tuition is going to go up because you're going to have to repeat that experiment multiple times to
yeah,
get enough data to be able to analyze it, right? Or you can just, go to a coach, and yeah, you're going to have to, you know, pay a coach something, but it's a lot cheaper than the tuition of, experimenting over and over again. Or you use technology and you go to Vinton Poker Coaching AI, which is fucking great, amazing, and free, right? It's like kind of like, you know, Thomas Edison in his lab trying to invent a light bulb by doing it 1,000 times over a multitude of years.
yeah,
Or now you have, you know, computer software and AI that you can just experiment with for absolutely free. Which one would you rather do?
yeah. True, but like I think that's like the pretty much a huge thing in poker is like what feedback you get too, because it's like so much of the time, like if you're talking it with somebody like your buddy who plays poker, he's super overconfident even though he doesn't know what he's talking about, yet you like kind of listen through him. Or like also with poker, it's like really hard, especially for like beginners, to like know what is the correct feedback or what, because there's so you can really take, is whatever you take in, kind of, and it's hard to decipher sometimes what the correct feedback will
Yeah,
be. Like you see on Reddit, fucking everyone's arguing about the hand or whatever. There's a million different opinions.
yeah, absolutely. That's a tremendous uh roadblock to poker improvement. That's why I've said this to you before, and I have this strong belief and a set rule that you never talk poker strategy with a friend or someone that you play poker with. Um, Number one reason is because I don't care how good the other person is or how bad they are. If you play against them, there is going to be some element of distrust and information gating, right? Um,
Yeah,
you go to a poker coach that you trust. There's two elements in there. One is their capability, The other one is their trust. If you go to a capable friend, the trust is not there, right? Because you, especially if you play against that friend, if you don't play against
Yeah.
each other, it's fine. But most poker friends tend to be friends that we meet at the poker table, right?
Yeah.
It's I've never made a poker friend that I've never played against with because how do you meet them, right?
Yeah.
Um, and poker coaching, uh, someone should be your coach if you don't play with them. That's a cardinal rule. That's kind of like therapy. In therapy,
Yeah.
it's they even have a rule against I don't know what department it is, American Psychiatric Association or something. Um, that said you can't romantically get involved or you can't get involved with your patient at all because once you do that, all trust goes out the window, right? You need a therapist that is just uh, subjectively neutral
No, but
to what.
yeah, but like it's not even like that. More like it's like kind of like picking your therapist. It's like imagine you can go to the fucking hippie guy who's gonna prescribe you like to eat like only grass and apples for a week or whatever, or you can go to like the guy who's like I don't know, went to Harvard and has like a PhD or whatever.
Yeah,
But it's a lot more vague in poker like that because there's no, especially in cash games, you never fucking know how good somebody really is unless they're like, I don't know, a public figure or something or like something like this. But it's like very, very hard kind of to decipher between who's the fucking crazy guy who's going to just feed me apples and who's the guy who's like actually has like some theory behind him. And he's like actually like studied with like what I don't know, the concepts that I would say are like actual like real concepts in poker, like the fucking like fundamental math behind it and like maybe some theory behind it and like exploits and stuff,
well,
versus the guy that
that
just,
what you're referring to deals with the other half of the poker education coaching problem, which is are they skilled, right?
yeah,
And that equation is not as linear as are they skilled or are they not, right? Because they can be skilled, right? But if they don't match your playing style, that skill is completely useless, right? For example, if uh, I'm a lag, right? I'm
yeah,
a very loose aggressive player, and I want to get coaching, and I go to a coach who's very successful as a cash player, but his style is just exact opposite of me, right?
yeah,
I'm not going to get any benefit from that, right? So number one is, are they capable? And then two, are they a good match for me? And this is also an issue in therapy, right?
yeah,
Are they capable, and are they able to understand and advise me in a way that I can receive it, right? Uh, and dealing with that, most people go about it the wrong way. They're like, oh, show me your logbook for poker sessions, show me your win rate. They go on these websites where
yeah,
they can look at win rate. Well, that doesn't really tell you anything. Number one, that can be fake. Number two, uh that doesn't tell you if their playing style is similar to you. That doesn't tell you if they can communicate what they do well to you, right? that that's a huge skill that you need in someone who's you're seeking their advice of, right? They can know how to play the game really well and they can match your style really well. But if they can't communicate that information to you, that's completely useless, right? So
yeah,
how do you find a good coach is just like how do you find a good therapist? Just like how do you find a wife? You go on a lot of dates, right? You you
yeah,
you go and you sit down with different coaches. You go and sit down with different therapists, and you take out a lot of girls on dates, and you see how you connect with them, right? You see if uh, they know what they're talking about, if they are capable of transferring that information to you, if they are capable of understanding you, you're capable of understanding them. Um,
yeah,
it's a process to find that coach, and that's why when you do finally find it, it can be a huge difference in your career between making it and not making it. And everyone, I don't care what level of poker you're at, everyone needs a coach. Daniel Negreanu has a coach, right? Michael Jordan had a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. People at the top of their game, they have a coach because you always need that external point of view at your game. And these coaches at the highest level of each game, they're not the best players often. They're good, right? But they know to understand the game. They understand um, you as a player, right? They most of these coaches have a very professional, strong bond with the people that they coach because they understand each other really well. Now, one of the benefit of the AI, the Vinton Poker Coaching AI, is that it has the knowledge and it can adapt itself to your personality,
Yeah, true.
right? Whereas a human, it's harder. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
great free resource, and coaching is amazing, especially if you can get it, from a human that you trust and you respect their game. But in poker, which I think is the hardest game in the world to play, you need a resource that you trust, that you can learn from, and coaching is the best way. And you know, I don't know what you think about Vinton Poker Coaching AI, but I really think it's really amazing. I use it. I created it and I use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I use it more. I
So
remember the first month I used it, I think I had my best month ever at 1-3. I would like every session I would just like anything felt ever wrong, I would just take a break, type to that, whatever, come back to the table and use it and then like feel better. But I remember the first month I discovered it, it was the best month I ever played, like results wise at 1-3.
that's awesome. And that's exactly how you should use it. Last night you had a bad session. What did I tell you? Shrug it off, write down, the hands that you think you played bad or you think you played good. Sleep it off and then put it in the AI, or call me and we'll talk about it. Uh, uh, like Hemingway used to say, uh, when it comes to writing, you write drunk, edit sober. Poker is kind of, you know,
That's
not
good.
exactly the same way, but you play and then once your emotions have calmed down, then you analyze. You don't analyze right
Yeah.
away. I mean, sometimes you can do between hands if you really need to, but if you really want to have a study regimen where you can continuously improve your game, you have to incorporate regular, clear-minded review of your game after every session, and the best way to do it is with a coach. And if you can't do it with the AI.
Yeah, but I think there's something I remember last session I forgot about actually. That quote reminded me that like I think I need to focus on a lot more. It's um there's a spot. I remember it was it was a hand and I would like fucking this guy pretty much just check raised me on the turn like and I didn't expect it and I was like what the fuck, like okay, it was an easy fold for me, like I'm bluffing and he just check raising me on the turn and jams on me. But like I like it's like kind of like when you're in the spot and like you feel the emotions, like I feel like a lot of the time I'll just be like feeling the emotion too much and I need to like calm down and then get to my clear decision. Cause a lot of the time I'll just be like, I don't know, like something I just check raise me, like I literally like laugh at it or whatever, because I'm like, now I'm just in a sick spot and it's like kind of funny to me because it's like just fucking disgusting. But like I really need to like just take some breaths and like get rid of that laughter, get rid of everything, just like have a clear mind so I can actually like think instead of like just being overwhelmed by like the surprise of this guy's check raise or like just the anger about like fuck, this guy really just is like doing this to me right now, like
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, if I were to say it more accurately, is you're reacting instinctively,
yes.
right? And when you have a lot of experience in anything, your instinct normally is good enough to carry you through it, right? But
Yeah.
uh, in poker, because the variables are infinite, right? We never play the same hand ever again. So, as no matter how capable you are, almost every hand that you play, not almost, every single hand that you play is uncharted territory, right?
Mhm.
So reacting instinctively, the more experience you have, yeah, it works on easy spots, but in tough spots, it doesn't work. Most likely than not, is going to land you on the wrong decision. If you ever watch these tournament players on TV, they fucking tank 30 seconds for every decision, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, there is some strategic element into it, but there's also it's a avoidance of that reacting instinctively, right? When
Yeah.
somebody does something that you want to react instinctively to, notice it. Always slow down, right? Don't react instinctively. Even if your instinct says I should do this or that, or this is an easy spot, review it. Take the time at the table, slow down, and force yourself to think through that decision, right? And if you still end up that, hey, my instinct was right, this is the right decision, go ahead and do it. But you would be surprised. More often than not, your instinct is wrong because
Yeah.
every hand is unique.
Yeah.
And the
Like,
only way to combat that is to have a policy that, at a minimum, you take your time, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, which can seem like a lifetime at the live poker table. 10
mhm.
seconds is a long time for every fucking action. But at a minimum, 5 seconds, slow down and think through it. You know, I stick to that a lot of times, and people get mad at me at the table. They think I'm slowing the game down, right?
Yeah.
Last time I was playing in California, some guy told me off. Yeah, he's like, oh, this fucking guy always, tanking for every
Thanks.
decision. And
Yeah.
my reply to him is like, yeah, man, I'm sorry. I'm not as smart as you. I'm not going to argue with you, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
take my time. It's my money, right? I'm going to take my time. Now, I'm not going to take 2 minutes for every decision, but I'm going to take the 5 seconds that requires to center me so I don't instinctively, without thought, react to every poker action by my opponent. Uh, that's really the crux of it. Just force yourself 5 seconds and bring yourself back to reality, you know?
Yeah, like, I've been, like, implementing, like, something that's helped a lot, like, I've been just, like I'll always tank until, like, I know exactly how much is in the pot and, like, who like, 'cause especially, like, multi-way, they'll be so fast and then, like, I don't know, I tank till then, but, like, I think the main thing that is a leak right now, it's like that, like it's like something will happen, then it's like you feel the emotion, and then I need to, like, ride it even deeper until, like, I get to, like, sanity, like, get rid of the emotion, like, until, like, I have, like, the clear picture of what's actually happening, like and right now, I'm still acting too fast, I'm still, like, making my decision with, like, a little bit of emotion, like, I'm still not in that, like, clear, perfect headspace that I should be in when I make my decisions.
That's a great rule. One of the things that I do, you need a pattern interruption, right? If your
Yeah.
pattern is someone acts and you react instinctively, you need a pattern interruption mechanism. And sometimes it's not enough to say, I'm going to wait 5 seconds for every decision because there's nothing other than your internal clock interrupting your pattern. And if your internal clock is, gone out for lunch, there's nothing there. But if you can set a rule, just like you said, a simple rule that before every decision I make, I count the remaining chips of my opponent. That interrupts your pattern, right? That takes your thought out of your mind out of reacting instinctively to an actual task that will bring
Yeah.
your thought process back into churning and thinking about the hand. That's really that's really a great tool to use. Something simple. It doesn't really have to be anything specific, just a pattern interruption. And if that pattern interruption is something that gives you more information about the hand, even better. Something as simple as, okay, he did this. After someone takes every action, I want to know how much money they got behind.
Yeah. Like, something like I think that's perfect, yeah, I'll probably add that as well, like, so because it's, like, really nice, like, I kinda, like, start in my head, it's like so I like, when I'm analyzing at the end, it should be something like, "Okay, this guy with $300 behind just bet $100 into a $200 pot after whatever, this line. Now it's on my turn, and what should I do?" Like, so just so you can get that, like, clear sentence out kind of in your brain about like what the fuck is actually happening right now, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. That's great too. Are you gonna go play tonight?
Yeah, yeah, I'll play. I feel good. Um,
Cool.
yeah,
I think
but
I'm gonna go play tonight as well. Awesome, man. Go ahead and uh play and let me know how it goes. If you uh like I said, if you have any tough it doesn't have to be tough decisions, just tough decisions. Even if you have a great hand, you stack someone, you played it, you think you played it really well, write it down and analyze it the next day.
yeah,
We
that's
only
the
tend to analyze our
mhm,
losing hands, but we also make a shit ton of mistakes in winning hands, hands that we get lucky on, hands that we should get a lot more EV out of and we don't, you know?
yeah. It's interesting how like because it's like technically you should be like, studying the most common like frequent mistakes or whatever, but it's just like so hard, especially when you're the own personal one who's recording everything to like really think about what actually you should be are the hands that are the most important, It's like a impossible task kind of. Like you need like ideally you'd have like ideally, like, it's like online, you could look at every one of your previous hands played, so you could, like, really dig into it, but with live, it's so tough because so many things you'll forget about and yeah.
Yeah. So, uh, with that, you do the best you can, and one of the ways to maximize data generation and feedback is just after a big hand, get up from the table, go to the bathroom, take a walk, write the hand down in your notepad in your phone or whatever, and then go back to the game.
Yeah, I think the biggest sign, honestly, is, like, that feeling where it's, like, of, like, when you're uncertainty, like, I think uncertainty is a really good, thing to, like, look into when you're uncertain of things. Look into
Yep,
those hands.
yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Uncertainty means every spot of uncertainty is an opportunity, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and it's not going to resolve itself by just repetition. Somebody a little while ago told me, "Oh, the best way to learn how to master poker is just by playing it." No, it's an incredibly unintuitive game. You just gotta repeat the same mistakes over and over again. You don't get
Yeah.
good at almost anything by just doing it. You
Well,
need
that's
you get good at it um, by feedback. You know that Malcolm Gladwell had this rule about 10,000 hours of
yeah.
practice. Do something with 10,000 hours, you get good at it. That's incomplete information. Now, if you do it with 10,000 hours with deliberate practice, you get good at it. And what is deliberate practice? Do something, analyze how you did it, get some feedback, work that feedback into the next time you do it. Now you do that 10,000 fucking hours, you get master at it.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, I literally did that for like probably the first like 3 or 4 years of poker. I never studied, just lost money. I probably put in 10,000 hours, maybe. Like, I don't know. But
Yeah,
yeah, like it doesn't,
most
you
people
have
do
to,
that.
yeah.
And that's why poker is alive and well, thank God.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of refreshing now because I'm not the youngest kid anymore, Now I see like the 19-year-old kid punters. I'm like, oh my God, it
Oh,
used to be
fuck you,
me.
man. You're 24, you're not the youngest kid anymore.
It's true. I'm not. I see the new wave of the punters. It's nice to
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah. God bless the fish. All right,
Indeed.
brother.
All
We'll
right.
talk
Nice
tomorrow.
chat. Well, talk to you later.
Yeah, man. Bye bye.